Oklahoma's coming off a 8-5 season, a loss to Clemson and Oklahoma State. I know it's not the best thing to bring that up to you, but it did happen. But there is a lot of talent coming back to the Sooners. Just kind of talk about this year and how spring football went, Toby.
Well, I think that, yeah, you're right. There's a lot of unrest, I think, in Sooner Nation because of the way the season ended a year ago. Such high hopes last year, especially with the way it started. And they felt like they had a team that could contend for a national championship. And certainly that fell apart about halfway through the year. So there is a quarterback battle. Trevor Knight is the returner, but certainly not guaranteed to be the starter this year. He had a great Sugar Bowl 2 years ago against Alabama, but was inconsistent this past year. Had some very good games and some very bad games, but certainly didn't do enough to say he's the guy. I think Baker Mayfield is his main competition. He's a Texas Tech transfer that was actually the Big 12 offensive freshman of the year 2 years ago before coming to Oklahoma. Had to sit out last year. A lot of people are excited about him. He has a lot of pizzazz to him. He's not that big. I think he's about 6 foot tall, 6'1" maybe. But he runs around, makes plays, also tries to force it at times, so maybe a little more turnover prone, and he threw 2 interceptions in the spring game. And then they got a couple of youngsters that I think people didn't feel like were necessarily in the hunt in Cody Thomas and Justice Hansen. Thomas a sophomore and Hansen a redshirt freshman. But both of them had excellent spring games. And so I think everybody was a little more confused after the spring game than before. They thought it was a 2-man race, and now they feel like maybe it's a 4-man race going into the fall. And both those guys look more of your prototypical 6'4" pocket passer type guy. So I honestly have no idea who the quarterback's going to be. I think that probably odds-on favorite right now is Baker Mayfield, but that's a guess. And certainly it's open going into the fall. So that's kind of the number one storyline that's going on. The defense was shaky a year ago. They gave up way too many yards through the air especially. So Mike Stoops has kind of moved and rededicated himself to the secondary this year. Obviously there were some staff changes in the offseason, and there were also some staff reassignments for the guys that were back. And Mike Stoops is still the defensive coordinator, but he's going to help oversee the defensive backfield now. So that's going to be another big area of emphasis, is improving the play on the back end of the defense. They feel pretty loaded at the the skill position. Samaje Perine's back at running back, and they're stacked at running back. Joe Mixon was, by a few services, the number 1 running back in the country coming out of high school 2 years ago. Had to sit out last year, but he's ready to go this year. Rodney Anderson, one of the most highly recruited running backs in the nation, is a true freshman this year. They've got Sterling Shepard back at wide receiver, who was arguably having one of the best seasons in the country until he was slowed by injuries about midway through last year. They added a junior college wide receiver who might have been the story of the spring game in D.D. Westbrook out of Blinn Community College. Real speedster, but 6'1", so he's got decent size too. So I think Shepard and Westbrook, and probably the other guy that has made news in the spring is tight end Mark Andrews, who is a redshirt freshman, 6'6". He's from Arizona. And I think in the new look offense, they're probably going to use the tight end more than they had in the past. So those guys kind of stood out in the spring. Let me see if there's anything I'm forgetting.
What about Perine at running back? I mean, he obviously made a splash last year. Still a lot of momentum coming into this year. What's the excitement around campus and with Coach Stoops with Perine?
Yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of excitement. I mean, he has, with that one game, that one performance against Kansas last year, he kind of went from a star to kind of that next level celebrity around here. They didn't play him much in spring, to be honest with you. He wore blue numbers, as did Sterling Shepard in the spring game, so you couldn't hit him. which for a running back made for some interesting possessions. They could touch him and he was down. So kind of like they treated him like a quarterback so he wouldn't get hurt. But no, I think there's tremendous amount of excitement surrounding Perine. I think they feel like they've got, one of the best running backs in America, and not just him. I think they feel like that core of Mixon and Anderson and even Alex Ross, who had some big carries last year, and Daniel Brooks had a nice spring game. Those guys can really tote the rock. The interesting thing is going to be, they went out and brought in a new offensive coordinator in Lincoln Riley, who has really specialized in throwing the ball all over the yard. So the question Sooner fans have had is, are you still going to be able to use what appears to be your greatest strength on offense, which is Samaje Perine? So integrating what appears to be an impressive rushing attack into the Lincoln Riley offense is what's going to be interesting to see, I think, early on.
Well, what are your thoughts on the Tennessee Volunteers? Of course, Tennessee made the trip out to Norman last year to take on Oklahoma. Great atmosphere. The fans coordinated each section with crimson and the cream colors, so that was pretty neat to see. And of course, Tennessee actually had that same idea against Florida with the orange and white checker Neyland. So they kind of got that idea from Oklahoma. So what are your thoughts kind of from seeing Tennessee last year, and maybe if you've been keeping up with them a little bit in the off season throughout spring and maybe going into summer? What's your thoughts on Butch Jones building that program?
Yeah, I think from afar, first off, that was a tighter game than some people expected when they came to Norman a year ago. I think Sooner fans are as excited about this game as they've been about any non-conference game in some time, and that is because of Neyland Stadium and the tradition of sailgating in Tennessee football and all the pomp and circumstance that goes with that venue on a Saturday afternoon or night whenever we're going to play this game. I have heard OU fans talking for years now about how excited they are to go to Knoxville. So I think from just a road trip standpoint, you get two great programs, and it's great to host Tennessee here, and I hope Tennessee fans had a great time. But it is a lot of fun to get to go see these other historic venues in college football when you love the sport as much as OU fans love and appreciate the sport. So they're very much looking forward to seeing, the marching band form the T and the checkerboard end zone, Neyland Stadium, and all that goes into that. From a football team standpoint, it's a little bit scary to see what Butch Jones is doing in recruiting here these last couple of years. As you know, these games are approaching. As a Sooner fan, you say, well, great, they're getting good right about the time Oklahoma's going to play them. And so I think you've got you got an interesting matchup in this game because you've got a Tennessee program that looks like it's finding its footing and ready to start, challenging the big boys in the SEC again. And you've got a Sooner team that is trying to figure out exactly where they are right now, because they were smacked down pretty good a year ago. They thought they were one of the big boys and then got knocked down a peg. So this is going to be game 2 of the season for OU anyway. Very early on, we're going to get a good look at exactly what everybody's got. But, just from seeing what Butch Jones has done in recruiting, seeing that team that was in Norman a year ago, and how young they were and how many guys they're going to have back, I think Oklahoma's in for a mighty test on that Saturday.
Yeah, it should be an interesting matchup. Definitely Tennessee will be a better football team. Like you said, what Butch Jones has been able to do on the recruiting trail the last couple of years, and seeing these high school prospects who commit kind of early to Tennessee, see them talk about Tennessee throughout Twitter, social media, and see them actually come on campus now and take the reins as freshmen and finally step on the field. It's kind of neat to see them go through that whole high school process and then finally on the field wearing the college uniform of Tennessee.
That's good. That's good for college football. College football needs Tennessee to be a dominant program again. So I got some relatives over there who are huge Tennessee fans, season ticket holders, and I'm anxious to see Tennessee football become elite again.